Well, hello everybody, and welcome back into the Yard and Gardens for what is both a glorious and a tragic sort of day. Looking into the weather, it looks like we're getting our first, significant sort of frost event coming up this weekend. So, at the very least, the tomatoes are coming in, and as promised, I want to talk about the Three Sisters garden today because this is by far my most successful attempt with it. So, let's get started there. So those of you who have followed me over the years have, seen a few just horrifying attempts at gardening with the Three Sisters method. And this year, I have to say, things seemed to work out significantly better for me than they have in the past. We can get by some tomatoes here. We've got rather nice looking young pumpkin there. And that's about the right size for it, so I'm not at all disappointed with that. There are several more of them hidden throughout all this, and the spaghetti squash has been just crazy productive. Fresh flowers on it still. We've got a small squash forming there. Still got plenty of them throughout. Nice looking one there. We'll find more of them as I harvest because I want to bring them in today too. I wouldn't like to have them freeze on me. But anyway, this year with the spacing of the corn, which a lot of people worried about, I'd have to say I got some pretty decent ear production. We're just going to try and carefully step around some more glorious spaghetti squash. Like, here's a nice example. We've taken in, I think, 4 so far. It looked pretty much like this, and they were all very much full. No significant chunks that didn't get pollinated or anything, and there was some concern because of the spacing that pollination would be an issue. Now I do have some little stunted guys here. These will end up going to the chickens and making them very happy, so that is far from wasted, but there are still quite a few that we'll be able to bring in and enjoy over the coming weeks, so that'll be nice. Now each of these rows basically represents a whole packet of corn seeds. Set me back maybe a whopping $2. And at the same time, I can get 2 well-traveled ears of corn at the grocery store for about $2, $1.99 on sale. So, having gotten 4 already, I've at least gotten my investment back in the corn. So that's not bad. For me, that's actually pretty darn good. The spaghetti squash, as I've mentioned a few times, we saved the seeds from a squash we got at the grocery, planted those seeds, so technically all of those squash are completely free. That would be, profit on my garden this year. Looking through these beautiful tall corn stalks, we've got what's left of the bean pile in the middle. Now this wasn't necessarily as easy to harvest as I would like, so I think next year I may put the beans at the back of things, and instead of 3 plantings in the middle, because I have spaghetti squash, yellow string beans, and pumpkins, I'll just do beans at the back, and then, maybe 2 different mounds of the same squash, possibly staggered a little bit. For flower production, I haven't decided if I'm going to go with that or not, because in the end, I did end up getting a lot of spaghetti squash, right? So, I don't really think I need to be as worried about staggering that as I was earlier in the season. Oh, here's a nice pumpkin. Got a little bit of color for us there. That's not bad. And yeah, okay, so the pumpkin seeds, that's probably a $2 pumpkin at the grocery store easy. Maybe less than that in a big city, but if I were to buy a pumpkin at the grocery, I'm guessing $2. Each one of these pumpkins, thinking more about how I use them instead of how I would buy them, roasts up and produces basically 1 recipe's worth of the harvest loaves I love to make, or 1 good pie. That's why they're sugar baby pie pumpkins, because that's exactly what they're for. They're incredibly sweet when they're nice and ripe. So my money is definitely back on this again, like maybe $2 for the pack of seeds. So I can think of 5 of these pumpkins that I think will be large enough to mature and use. So that's $10 on a $2 investment. That's not bad. Standing back up again, we've got the black thumb potato bed here, which is a whole different adventure. Don't need to harvest that today because they can sit through a frost and sweeten up a little bit. Oh, I just see a brand new pumpkin in there. Never noticed that little guy in there before. Got a lot of glare on my camera, so I don't know if you can see it or not, but find out in the edit. Anyway, this has definitely been the best spacing for everything, and the corn has worked out to be a success, even though these two rows are so far apart, and they recommend growing corn in like rows, 4 rows, fairly close so you can get that wind pollination. But you know, I look at the results that I've gotten from this and I think maybe we don't need to be as worried about that as we may have thought. So yes, very successful with the Three Sisters garden this year, and even though my season was so short and I planted everything basically at the exact same time, I have been able to harvest and will be able to harvest from everything that I planted in this garden patch. So that is incredible. I don't know if you can hear the chicken just going off in the background, but she's got a lot to say today. I imagine they're very excited about all the weeds and various bits of vegetable matter they're going to get today. But here we can see, you know, this one pumpkin vine has gone crazy growing out of that garden this year. And even now, you know, it's got little bitty pumpkin on there that it's trying to throw on. Nowhere near enough time for that, but look at that grow. Oh, we've had, come on little frog, don't be shy. We've had so many of these little frogs here this year. It's wonderful, just wonderful. Anyway, back to the garden. So yeah, that's this year's Three Sisters garden. Now, taking a look at my crazy and wild looking tomato patch. This, considering I had given up all of these seedlings for dead, just blows me away. It is a great tragedy to me that very, very few of these tomatoes have taken color. So I'm not necessarily going to get to save seed stock from as many of them as I had hoped. And, well, that's just kind of the way it goes. I want to collect seeds that will actually make it in the season that I've got here. Here we've got those broad ripples. Look at that. Oh, just dropped her. That one, that's a seed tomato right there. Absolutely delicious and ripe and ready to go. And playing hard to get. All right. Now the seeds inside this are going to be absolutely perfect, and it's from a short season tomato, so I can count on this to produce for me in, you know, the seasons that are coming up. And this season has not been particularly great, so the fact that it was still able to produce and ripen, very impressive. All of these little clusters are from one plant. Like, this thing totally spread out. I'm almost inclined to think if I had put it in a cage, it wouldn't have gone this crazy. And people laugh at me all the time for talking about plant feelings, but I suspect that it felt it had room to roam, so it did. Anyway, it's going to be really interesting to see what the total numbers are with the various types, because I do have, like, this is a grape tomato growing in here, and see over here we've got, this is the Sweet Juliet hybrids. Oh, I was really hoping for some red ones here this year. We've got another grape tomato back there behind it. Hopefully you can see those delightful little clusters. And then beyond that, we're getting into your larger, I think they're better boys. And in the back, absolute back of this mess, I know those are Cherokee purples. So it's going to be really interesting, yeah, to see what the piles of tomatoes look like. What's also going to be interesting is finding out how these assorted parsley plants that I planted around the frame of this bed have done, because for the most part they've been really, really covered over by all these tomatoes and their little thistle buddies. But parsley grows a lot longer into the cold season than a lot of the various other, you know, garden plants, and in many cases than a lot of the weeds do. So I'm hoping to use them to kind of feed the soil a little bit longer, since I'm about to harvest so much of the plant matter that has been pumping carbons and stuff into the soil to feed the soil biology. So yeah. Alright, I guess I should just get to it. Get the dill here. And start collecting for posterity. It's going to be a lot easier to see those perennial onions when I'm done. Alright, clippers in a box. Maybe several boxes. Alright, so I've collected hopefully enough boxes. Nice and shady on the garden right now, so even though it's sunny at the moment, it's supposed to be cold, cold, cold this weekend. We'll get started. I've got the lovely shocks here to assist me. So hopefully this won't be too much of a time consumer, but we're about to find out. So here we've got the remains of the second plant that I pulled out. Nice bit of vegetable matter produced there, but it just had one cluster of tomatoes on it. So far this is 2 of the plants. It really looks like these would have done really well if I had an extra month or so to go in my garden season. So I'm going to keep plugging away with these Cherokee purple varieties until, you know, one year I finally get one that ripens on time, and then I've got my long-term keepers, haven't I? But I got a lot of plants to go. So here we are, just a quick update, far from finished. This first box is pretty much full though. Starting to make my way through the mass of plants. Now I am leaving plenty of these weeds behind, but this is my so-called cover crop. This is how I intend to feed the soil biology until that Canadian snow cover makes it a moot point. So this is going to look really weedy when we're done, but it's going to be super healthy next year. Anywho, so we've got a little bucket of super smalls over here. These are going to end up as like relish and stuff. Shocks has got some of the better boys and a few of the other random varieties that she's working into that box there. Barely touched the cherry tomato section. This is glorious. I'm blown away, because I mean, think about how little effort I put into this garden. I don't even like watering my gardens, right? So like this is minimal input gardening right there. Okay, so we're pretty much done pulling plants out of the tomato and onion bed, and there's still a lot of green in there, so that's good. Like, that's going to keep feeding my soil and make for a better garden next year. So what we're looking at for green tomatoes, a couple of nice boxes there. This bucket here is all of stuff that's they're just way too small, going to be super hard, so probably going to end up in a relish or something. Then we got another box of tomatoes there. Found a few parsleys along the way. I think they'll become a little stronger as the days go on for the next couple weeks, because now they're getting a lot more light. That one in the corner where the tomato plant failed, obviously, nicest looking parsley. But quite a different look here. And time to get into that Three Sisters garden. Oh my. So there's definitely more thistle in this tomato patch than I'm going to want to leave behind. But I'll come through here a little bit later with those big leather gloves and my snippers. Put them all in a pile and undoubtedly burn them, because I've heard that like chopping them up with the lawnmower or whatever just spreads them out more, and I certainly don't need more of them growing around. They're a little prickly when I walk around barefoot doing my happy gardening thing, so maybe y'all can let me know if you've heard one way or the other about that. But for now, we can turn our attention back to the Three Sisters garden patch. Kind of just work my way towards the house here, I think, and see what I can find. I don't think I'm going to be able to take an organized attack at it, because I don't want to like step on squash on my way to the corn, so I'm not going to be able to do too much for updates along the way. So I'll let you know what the plan is. And the plan is to basically just harvest the corn, but leave the stalks. I know most people would cut them down. Most people around here have anyway. I, on the other hand, am going to leave them so that they can keep catching solar energy, pumping that energy into my soil, and hopefully next year we can also have a nice, really productive garden here. I will let cold weather kill them off naturally, and then probably break them up over the winter and feed them to the chickens, because they seemed to like it when I did that last year. But corn certainly harvests easy enough. Ta-da! And that's pretty much how I'm going to leave it. Maybe take these outer leaves off, clean up whatever that is, and in a cardboard box. Those will go, because that seems to me like how you do long-term storage on corn. Haven't really had to worry about that before. Now, since I am undoubtedly going to be trampling all over the squash, my goal is to kind of just harvest these nicer ones when I find them. A little prickly though. That's not bad. Oh. Well, so much for that catching solar energy. Well, snip that off. Hadn't really meant to take off that much of the living matter. I'll have to be more careful, but the rest of this I'll be doing without the camera. Anyway, the plan is to leave as much of this squash trying to live as possible, and yet harvest as much of the fruit off of it as I can. I believe pumpkins and spaghetti squash count as a fruit. Seeds are on the inside. So, yeah. Alright. The beans, on the other hand, I think are probably a total write-off. So, while you can't see them right now, I'm probably just going to leave them to do whatever over the winter, and mix them in next year. Hopefully for a bit of a nitrogen boost. We'll just have to see, really. But it's nice and warm at the moment, so I need to get cracking on this, and I will show you the end results when I get there. The remains of the day, as it were. I tell you, I just checked the time. It's like 2:30 in the afternoon. On the day before, it's supposed to freeze at night, and it sure does not feel like it's about to freeze. I am sweating. But, so here we have the collection of spaghetti squash that was still left on that massive pile of vine. I'm so amazed with just how much plant matter was produced there. I mean, this and the plant, that's all airborne carbon that's, you know, it's found a better use. Look at these pumpkins, eh? This one right there, that's got pie written all over its future. It's a very near future, I dare say. And then, in this old delivery box, who got, I don't know, I see 5, so probably 10 decent sized cob of corn. We've already had 4, so 14, that's basically $1 each around here, 14 bucks. Cost me $4 to plant it, that's $10 profit, that's not bad. And then of course, the chicken pile. They'll be pretty happy when that gets tossed in. Might chop it up a little bit so it's easier for them to get at it, but also might not, give them, you know, something to play with for a little bit longer. Add to that the green tomato harvest, and you know, for such a chaotic garden, and for something I was so worried about, and such a short season, I think we did alright. So I guess the only thing left to harvest really is this black thumb potato bunker garden. Not going to do that today though, for a couple of reasons. First of all, it can handle the colder temperatures to come. And second of all, I'm hot, sweaty and tired. I'm good. I'm done gardening for the day. I have wreaked a fair bit of havoc and harvested a fair amount of food off this little tiny bit of land, much to the chickens' amusement, as you can still hear in the background. But there's still an awful lot of life in the garden, feeding life in the soil. So not only am I pleased with this year's harvest, I'm really excited for how things are going to grow next year based on everything I'm learning in all of this grassland and pasture and such research that I'm doing. So, cool. And on that note, and looking less than my best, I'm sure, I am going to wrap this up, head inside, and throw this onto the computer so I can share it with y'all on the YouTube. Thank you for sticking around and joining me. I'll do a post-game show on the 2020 garden season probably next Sunday, just kind of further discussions of the things I feel I've learned and experienced in the garden this year, and maybe some of my plans for next year, post-game, pre-game kind of show. Because as most of you who watch the channel know, yeah, I'm already thinking about the 2021 garden season to come, and how maybe, just maybe, I can squeeze some peppers into that and win the next aphid war that we all know is coming this winter. So stick around if you're curious to see the new tools and techniques that I'm trying, and I've learned a few, and again with all this pasture research that I'm doing, wouldn't you know it, a way to fight aphids came up in that I haven't tried. So yes, always something new in the world of experiments in the Darwin dungeon downstairs. So yeah, much love everybody. Thanks so much for sticking around this season, and I am heading inside.